She told her sister on a Sunday night. She said, "I asked for the divorce today. I feel relieved." 3 days later, she was shot 11 times in the kitchen while their two children slept in the room next door. Her name was Rachel Navarro. She was 34 years old. She worked as a dental hygienist. She coached her daughter's soccer team on Saturday mornings. She made breakfast every single day before driving the kids to school. On Monday morning, she handed her husband a document. She had already spoken to a lawyer. She was done. By Thursday morning, she was dead. "I'm Danny Cruz. I don't have a badge. I have documents." And the documents in this case tell a story that the official press barely touched. Let me walk you through it. Subscribe right now, and leave in the comments, what warning signs did you see? Let's start with who Rachel was, because the press reduced her to a victim. She was not just a victim, she was a person. And the more you understand who she was, the more you understand what her husband saw when he looked at her. Rachel grew up in a mid-sized city in the South. Her father was a contractor. Her mother was a school librarian. She was the second of 3 daughters. Her family described her as the organized one, the one with the plan, the one who always had a backup. She met Marcus Navarro when she was 26. He was 29. He managed logistics for a regional trucking company. He was not loud. He was not flashy. He was the kind of man who seemed stable. That was the word her sister used at trial. Stable. She thought he was stable. They married after 2 years of dating. They had a daughter, Lily, who was 6 at the time of the murder. They had a son, Connor, who was 4. By every third-party account, they looked like a regular American family. The house was clean, the yard was kept, the cars were paid off. But internal accounts told a different story. Rachel's sister testified that in the 18 months before the divorce request, Rachel had become a different person. She stopped calling as often. She canceled plans. She seemed tired in a specific way. Not physically tired, emotionally depleted. Rachel eventually told her sister the truth. Marcus controlled the finances completely. She had no access to the joint bank account without going through him. He reviewed every purchase she made. He questioned her when she was out past 7 in the evening. He did not hit her. That was important to understand. He never hit her. He did not need to. The control was structural. Rachel spent 6 months building her exit quietly. She opened a separate checking account. She transferred small amounts over time. She saved enough to retain a family attorney. She gathered financial documents from the shared home office while he traveled for work. She was not impulsive. She was strategic. And I think that is what terrified Marcus. Because when Rachel handed him the divorce papers on Monday, she was not asking for permission. She was executing a plan he had no knowledge of. She had already done the work. He was simply being informed. Now I want to talk about Marcus. Not to explain him, not to excuse him, to understand the mechanics of what happened next. Marcus Navarro was 41 years old. He had no prior criminal record. He was described by coworkers as quiet and professional. His supervisor told investigators he was reliable, always on time, always completed assignments. But reliability in a professional context is not the same thing as emotional stability. And what investigators found when they dug into his private behavior was a man who had constructed his entire sense of self around control. His cell phone records were a document. His text messages to his brother in the 48 hours after receiving the divorce papers were a document. And documents don't lie the way people lie on a stand. On Monday afternoon, 2 hours after Rachel handed him the papers, he texted his brother. The message read, "She thinks she can just walk out. She doesn't understand what she's doing to me." His brother responded, "Just let her go, man. It's not worth it." Marcus did not respond for 11 hours. When he did respond, he wrote one sentence. Investigators noted it. The prosecutor highlighted it at trial. The sentence was, "Some things can't just be let go." That text was sent at 2 in the morning on Tuesday. Now I want to reconstruct those 3 days, because this is where the story reveals itself. The gap between the divorce papers and the murder was not random. It was not emotional collapse. It was a window, and I believe Marcus used it deliberately. On Tuesday, Marcus went to work as normal. He arrived on time. He completed his shift. His supervisor noticed nothing unusual. Coworkers reported nothing unusual. But after work, The cell phone records showed a different story. He drove 22 minutes in the opposite direction of his home. He stopped at a pawn shop in a commercial district. He was inside for approximately 14 minutes. He did not purchase anything that day. He drove home. He made dinner. Rachel testified to her sister that night that the evening was eerily calm. She said Marcus barely spoke at dinner. He watched television. He went to bed early. She told her sister she was relieved by the quiet. On Wednesday, Marcus called in sick to work. That was the only sick day he had taken in 7 months. He stayed home. He drove out in the early afternoon. His phone pinged a tower near a sporting goods retailer outside of town. His debit card records showed no purchase at that location. Cash. He used cash. A store employee was interviewed post-arrest. The employee described a man matching Marcus's description who purchased a specific item using cash. The item was a box of .40 caliber ammunition. The employee remembered because the man asked questions about the type. He was methodical about it. He took his time. Marcus owned a legally registered .40 caliber handgun. He had owned it for 4 years. He had a concealed carry permit. The gun was kept in a lockbox in the master bedroom closet. On Wednesday night, Rachel texted her sister. The message said, "He's being too normal. It's making me nervous." Her sister told her she was probably overthinking it. She told Rachel to stay strong. Rachel responded, "I'm going to stay at Mom's next week, just to give space, let things settle." She never made it to next week. Thursday morning. Let me walk through what the evidence and testimony reconstructed. Rachel got up first. She always got up first. She went downstairs to the kitchen at approximately 6:15. Her routine was consistent. She put on coffee. She started preparing lunches for the kids. Lily and Connor were still asleep in their rooms at the end of the hallway upstairs. Marcus came downstairs at 6:40. This was slightly earlier than his usual pattern. He was dressed. Rachel was at the kitchen counter with her back partially toward the doorway. The forensic analysis of the scene told the story of what happened next in precise terms. 11 shots were fired. The pattern indicated he fired continuously. There was no pause. The medical examiner concluded that multiple shots were fatal individually, but he continued. 11 times. The neighbors called 911 at 6:47. They reported the sound of what they thought might be a car backfiring, then another, then more. Someone on the block recognized the pattern by the 4th or 5th shot and made the call. Police arrived at 6:53. They found Marcus seated at the kitchen table. The gun was on the counter. He did not run. He did not barricade. He was sitting there when officers entered. Lily and Connor were upstairs. They were awake. They had heard everything. Connor was found sitting on his bedroom floor, holding his stuffed animal. Lily was in the hallway at the top of the stairs. She had not come down. A responding officer said she asked if her mom was okay. That detail is in the report. I don't read it lightly. Marcus was taken into custody without incident. He said very little. He asked for water. He asked if his kids were okay. He did not ask about Rachel. How was he ultimately prosecuted? Let me give you the forensic and investigative picture. The cell phone records were foundational. The tower pings placing him near the pawn shop. The tower pings near the sporting goods store. The timing of his text messages to his brother. The content of those texts. The ammunition purchase was confirmed through the store employee testimony and surveillance footage from a camera mounted at the neighboring business. The footage showed a vehicle matching Marcus's truck parked in the lot. It showed a man entering the store. The resolution was not perfect, but the vehicle registration and cell tower data created a corroborating frame that the defense could not break. The gun registration was already on file. The handgun matched the recovered shell casings at the scene. The prosecution also presented testimony from Rachel's attorney. The attorney described the nature of the divorce proceedings. Rachel had requested sole custody. She had requested a forensic accountant to review the joint finances. Marcus was about to have his financial control exposed professionally and legally. This was not just a husband losing a marriage. This was a man who was going to be audited, who was going to lose custody access to his children, who was going to have his financial behavior reviewed by a court-appointed expert. The prosecutor framed it clearly. Rachel wasn't just leaving him. She was taking everything he had built to hide behind. I want to talk about the 3 days specifically, because I've looked at cases like this before, and the 3-day window is not unusual. It's a pattern. When a controlling partner is confronted with an exit they cannot block, there is often a period of surface-level calm. They go through the motions. They go to work. They eat dinner. They don't explode. People around them sometimes interpret this calm as acceptance, as processing. It is not acceptance. It is the removal of noise so they can think. What Marcus was doing during those 3 days, in my assessment, was not grieving. He was calculating. He was buying time to confirm his method, confirm his tool, confirm his moment. The calm was operational, not emotional. The ammunition purchase on Wednesday was the clearest evidence. He had a gun. He had ammunition already, presumably, but he went out and bought more. That is premeditation with specificity. That is not a man in emotional collapse. That is a man completing a checklist. The fact that he was dressed and downstairs early on Thursday, earlier than his usual pattern, tells me he had already decided. He had already chosen the moment. He knew Rachel's routine. He knew she would be at the kitchen counter at 6:15 with her back toward the doorway. He let her get settled. He gave her time to put the coffee on, to start the lunches, to have her back turned. I don't enjoy writing this, but I think it's important that we say clearly what the evidence shows. This was not a crime of passion. Crimes of passion are impulsive. They happen in the immediate moment of confrontation. This happened 3 days later, in a moment of domestic routine, with a weapon that required a separate ammunition purchase. This was planned. The documents say so. The trial lasted 9 days. The defense had a specific strategy. I want to address it because I think it matters. The defense argued that Marcus had been blindsided, that the divorce request had triggered a mental health crisis, that he had not slept in 3 days, that he had been in an altered state. They brought a psychologist who testified about acute stress reactions in men facing sudden family separation. They also, and this is the part that made me set down my notes and take a breath, they tried to use the divorce itself as partial justification. They framed Rachel's decision as a destabilizing action. They suggested that by serving him papers without warning, she had created the conditions for the breakdown. I want to be precise about this because language matters. They did not use the word provocation in a legal sense, but the architecture of the argument was the same. The argument was, she triggered this. The prosecutor dismantled it methodically. She pointed to the text messages. She pointed to the ammunition purchase. She pointed to the cell tower records. She said to the jury, acute stress reactions don't come with a trip to the sporting goods store for ammunition. They don't come with showing up downstairs early in clean clothes. They come with chaos. What you saw here was order. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. They returned a verdict of first-degree murder. They found that the evidence of premeditation was clear, and that the 3-day window, far from suggesting a breakdown, demonstrated deliberate planning. Marcus Navarro was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He did not show visible emotion when the verdict was read. A juror later told a local reporter that he seemed unsurprised, like he had already accepted it, like the outcome of the trial was just one more thing that was going to happen to him. I need to talk about Lily and Connor, because this story doesn't end with the verdict. The children were placed in the immediate care of Rachel's mother and father. Rachel's parents, both in their early 60s, took custody. There was no dispute. Marcus's family did not contest it. His own parents publicly stated they supported the children remaining with Rachel's side of the family. Lily was 6 at the time. Connor was 4. Neither child was required to testify. The court made sure of that. Lily, who was in the hallway at the top of the stairs that morning, has spoken to counselors extensively. What we know from the public record is that she required long-term trauma therapy. Her school accommodated her. Her grandparents structured their lives around stability. They moved to be closer to the school district the children were already attending. They maintained Rachel's routines as much as possible. The soccer team, the breakfast before school. Connor, who was 4, has less explicit memory of that morning. But trauma does not require explicit memory to take root. The research on this is clear. Rachel's sister told the courtroom in her victim impact statement that she thinks about the last text message every single day, the one where Rachel said she planned to stay at her mother's next week. She said, she had a plan. She always had a plan. He knew she had a plan. That's what he couldn't stand. I thought about that for a long time after I read it. Here is what I want to say as someone who has spent years looking at documents that don't make the front page. The 3-day window is not an accident. I have seen it in other cases. Not exactly 3 days, but a window, a gap between the triggering event and the act. And every time I see it, I see the same misreading from people around the perpetrator. They see calm, and they interpret it as resolution, as acceptance. They are wrong. What you are seeing in that window is not a man who has accepted his new reality. What you are seeing is a man who has decided on his response and is preparing to execute it. Rachel's sister saw the warning sign. She said the calm made Rachel nervous. Rachel felt it, but she had no language for it, no framework that told her the calm was the most dangerous period. I want to be clear about what the documents show as a pattern. Men who kill partners in the context of separation rarely do it in the immediate moment of confrontation. They do it in the days or weeks after, when the initial shock has passed, when the partner has begun to exhale, when the children are home and the routines have resumed, when the partner's guard has lowered. The domestic violence research community has documented this for decades. The period immediately after separation is statistically the most dangerous time for a victim of intimate partner control. Not during the confrontation, after. Rachel knew something was wrong. She told her sister the calm was making her nervous. She had made plans to leave. But she didn't leave that week. She planned for next week. That gap cost her everything. I'm not saying this to assign blame to Rachel. I am saying this because the warning signs exist. The calm after a confrontation with a controlling partner is not safety. It is the most dangerous phase. If you are in that situation, or someone you love is in that situation, do not wait for next week. The documents in this case are public record. The trial transcript is available. The cell tower analysis is in the court filings. The text messages are in the exhibits. What is not in the documents is Rachel's voice. I can tell you what the dental hygienist records say. I can tell you what the divorce attorney testified. I can tell you what her sister said, but I cannot give you Rachel Navarro back. What I can give you is the truth of what happened, assembled from sources that don't have a reason to lie. Cell towers don't lie. Debit card records don't lie. Shell casings don't lie. Marcus Navarro planned for 3 days, and then he walked downstairs in a clean shirt, and he did what he had decided to do. He is in a state correctional facility. He will die there. Lily and Connor are being raised by grandparents who love them. Rachel asked for a divorce on Monday because she was done, because she had built an exit plan quietly over 6 months, because she was organized, because she always had a backup. She deserved to use it. I'm Danny Cruz. I don't have a badge, I have documents. If this story matters to you, subscribe to this channel right now and tell me in the comments, what warning signs did you see? At what point did you realize where this was going? Every case I bring you is built from public records, court transcripts, and documented evidence. No speculation, no invented drama, just what the documents actually say. I'll see you in the next one.